Welcome back, Pahrump. We're back from the break, and if you missed the first segment of the show, we were tying our weight reduction and modified low carbohydrate diet into how it fits into cholesterol and cholesterol-related myths and how it fits into heart disease. And I want to remind our viewers that we do have a live number that is 727-8750. And if you have a question and no question is too dumb, too stupid, the only one that you don't ask is the one that I believe is dumb because you left yourself not knowing what you might have an important question, have an important answer that might change something you're doing and might help you. So please feel free to call in. With that, again, we're going to go back to this slide, and one of the slides right before break we talked about was the myth, and I don't know if you can see it up in the top of your screen, but basically what it says is that eating cholesterol and saturated fat raises cholesterol levels in the blood. And what we have found and what we know now is that 25% of what we eat in our diet affects our cholesterol. That's a very small portion of what we eat. And let's go back to the 1980s when President Reagan, in that area, he had a heart attack. And then, if I remember, everybody got on a low cholesterol kick. Let's get rid of cholesterol. At that time, we thought cholesterol was related to heart disease. And it is. I mean, there's no doubt that plaque forms in your arteries, and that plaque does rupture, and when that plaque does rupture, it's like a pimple. It basically liberates phospholipids. A lot of bad things can happen, and we do get clotting formation, and a heart attack can occur. But it's a very, very complex thing. And I don't believe that we really made that much of a difference in the overall outcome of of heart attacks by basically altering a diet, even though 80% of the people who have heart disease have a cholesterol of 220 or greater. But I've seen people that have cholesterols of 260, they have a pretty good HDL, they have an LDL, and they never have any heart disease. So there are these unknown factors that relate to that. The other 75% of our cholesterol comes from the cholesterol that we make. So it's produced in our body by the liver, and thus therein lies what we basically do as far as giving people lipid-lowering or cholesterol-lowering agents. What we switched, and here's where this whole thing falls apart, is that when we went from low cholesterol, we eliminated certain foods that are actually probably good for us, and we substituted carbohydrates, and we substituted sometimes bad carbohydrates. And the carbohydrates that we eat, such as sugar and things of that nature, they actually cause the obesity. They cause the high insulin production. They cause the blood pressure. They cause the sleep apnea. They cause all of the things that I think are bad in today's society. It's related to basically these carbohydrates, these sugars in our diet. One of those main ones is the high fructose corn syrup, which tricks our body and doesn't allow us to turn off a lot of the mechanisms in our body that keep us from going from meal to meal to meal. And it's a very complex thing, and I can spend some more time on it down the road. But if we can go back to those slides, one of the things, again, I want to bring up is that much of the cholesterol that's in the food we eat can't be absorbed into our bodies. So it does stay in your intestinal tract. Now, there's another slide later where we talk about the fact that even if we could absorb that cholesterol, it's not soluble in our blood. Cholesterol does not free float in our blood. It is carried around in lipoprotein. So that's why when you go to the doctor, he talks about HDL or LDL or VLDL. And what do they mean? And I'll go over them later. High density lipoprotein is your good cholesterol. LDL or low density lipoprotein is your bad cholesterol, and VLDL or very low density lipoprotein is basically another form of bad cholesterol, but it's not as bad as the LDL. It doesn't exist that long in your system and is more of a carrier between certain types of cholesterol. There's also chylomicrons, which are these huge fat globules that exist after you eat. And I'll never forget this. I drew blood when I I first started practicing medicine on someone who had to have a blood draw. They had just eaten Haagen-Dazs ice cream, and I don't know if it was a particular brand, but it was like an hour before their blood was drawn. And when that serum was spun down, it was white. It was white, loaded with fat. It makes an impression on you if you ever have that. Most people are fasting in the morning when they get their blood drawn, and they spin it down, and it's very nice and yellow because all the fat has been taken out of the system. So let's go back to the next slide. The body regulates the amount of cholesterol, again, by controlling internal production. And this last point I want to make, which is when cholesterol intake in a diet goes down, the body makes more, vice versa. So if you reduce your cholesterol in your diet, then your body will make more. So, and I have seen this, and one of the medications out there called Zetia actually block some of the reabsorption of cholesterol in the distal part of the intestinal tract, and it's an escape mechanism. If you take a statin that lowers your cholesterol, your body tries to escape and actually reabsorbs more or actually produces more. And it's very important. One of the things that I've been trying to educate my patients on is the fact that low cholesterol is almost as bad for you as high cholesterol, and we'll talk about that. I'll go into that a little bit after the break. We're going to take another short break, and we'll be right back to finish up the last half of this segment. Thank you for tuning in tonight.